Well, we're just maybe a little over a month away from The Matrix 4.
Yes.
Finally coming out. Now, Nick, I want to tell you right now, I'm sure if you watch some of the episodes I do during our lockdown time on films that I love that were not as loved, the Wachowskis are, and I do not joke about this, on my Mount Rushmore of best filmmakers, best directors for me of all time. They share a spot, but they're both on that.
They get it right about movies and storytelling and how it all.
And what I really appreciate is that every film of theirs feels like they are challenging themselves as filmmakers and challenging me as an audience member, and that goes exactly for this first Matrix film that we're going to talk about today, and even the sequels, which build on that world pretty nicely. It's been a few years since I've watched The Matrix. Actually, I haven't revisited the film. And just kind of was more than happy to do so for this event where we're going to talk about these Matrix movies before that fourth film happens.
All right. Today we're going to talk about The Matrix. Are we in it?
Yeah. What is this?
What is it?
Join us today for the first in our series of The Matrix movies. All right. Thanks for plugging in with us, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe Film Reviews.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and yes, thanks. Hit the like, subscribe button. Tell your friends about the show. We appreciate your viewerships. We like the new subscribers. We appreciate that. Today we're going to kick off because we heard about The Matrix coming up, so it's a great time to revisit the 1991 movie, The Matrix. So what is it all about?
Oh man, there's a lot to break down.
Nobody's supposed to show us. You can't really tell us.
There's a lot to say here, but I'm going to try and keep it as thin as possible. You probably know the plot already. So Thomas Anderson, under the alias Neo, is a hacker who's always felt like he was in a dream in need of waking up. When he meets the mysterious Morpheus, Neo learns that the world he's lived in his entire life is a simulation called the Matrix. Morpheus believes Neo is the one, capable of freeing all others from the Matrix, but Neo must make a choice and challenge everything he's come to know.
So, in the 90s, a prevalent subcategory of action movies was prevalent. It was called tech noir. So movies like 12 Monkeys, Strange Days, Dark City, 13th Floor, animation like Ghost in the Shell, all comes from that nexus which even started it, which is Blade Runner. Here, The Matrix was started a whole new thing, which is kind of like what we regarded as cyber noir. So after The Matrix, you have like Minority Report, iRobot, and of course the Total Recall remakes and stuff like that. Yeah. So this is kind of like the bridge between like tech noirs and cyber noirs.
Yeah, it seems like every decade we have like seminal sci-fi film that's going to decide how our science fiction films are going to go for the next 10 years.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of like, and depending on, in a case of like Blade Runner, the film came and went, didn't do very well, and because of that we missed out on something that we probably would have gotten this back in the 80s had that film been more successful, and The Matrix kind of burst onto the scene. I mean, not to joke, within 3 years of the first Matrix movie coming out, the bullet time effect was used or parodied over 20 times in major motion pictures in 3 years. Yeah. So it goes to show you that even just the little things that were done to this film to kind of ramp it up have really pushed the boundaries. I'll be honest here, did not like The Matrix the first time I watched it. I really, really did not like it. And part of it was that I felt like the film to me is a collection of really great ideas that I think work better when you see the follow-ups. And I'm going to tell you right now, The Matrix is my least favorite Matrix movie. I'm on the outside of this. Everybody else loves the movie. I really enjoy it, though. I've grown to love it, but it's just, for me, it is the weakest of the 4 Matrix movies that I've seen.
I actually will agree with you, even though there's a lot of people out there who like
we just lost like 40 subscribers.
But you have to get a lot of exposition to get the other ones. Kind of like Batman Begins is a great movie, but the next one's follow-up is, better because you don't have to do all this world building and take time to establish all this stuff and a little bit of drama. And we knew, Keanu Reeves is not going to go out the building and scaffolding. He's going to go with the police headquarters and have this dialogue and conversation because you have to explain what is really going on, right? I remember that when I was in college when this happened, and my favorite story is in an art class, and we all put our easels in a circle, and one of the students we're all working, just came up in the middle of the circle, just nonchalantly just said, "Have any of you guys seen The Matrix?" I'm still, what the heck? And of course, the next time we all meet, we sat and talked about this movie.
Yeah. If you had said back in 1999 that the sci-fi film everyone was going to talk about was not going to be The Phantom Menace, that would have shocked me, I think, because that's the film. It became this word of mouth thing, and I was brought into the film because friends of mine who were big on violent gunplay movies really liked this movie for the violent gunplay. They almost didn't care at all about the philosophical elements, which is what I was more into, and why I struggled with this first film more upon the first viewing, because I think there's, again, like a lot of philosophical sci-fi questions being asked, and the film is actually fairly it's actually fairly simplistic. If you really want to break it down, most of this film is actually pretty easy to understand. It's just blanketed in a lot of philosophical questions that make it harder to navigate. But honestly, it's a film about waking up from a coma. Really, at its simplest,
transitions,
core.
right?
Yeah,
transitions. Or even if you're still reluctant to, who are your identity, and yes, if you're signing your identity. And the Wachowski's talking about is transitions from where they come from to where they went before. Now they're both women. Yeah. So they think this is. They also describe this as their personal story of transitioning as well. Yeah. Through what they originally were to what they identify as now. So almost like Neo's character. Yeah.
There's questioning the world that we're in. Neo is constantly questioning
his role in life, right?
He lives two lives. He lives the daytime, the Thomas Anderson, which I forgot his name was Tom. He lives the Thomas Anderson character.
I know Mr. Anderson.
And then at night he's Neo. He's the person who he really is. He's the person who's questioning. He's the person who's kind of on the outskirts. The one that, he's the less popular version of himself when he's at night, but that is who he really is. I like that the film begs the question of, in order to be reborn as our true selves, we have to kill our old selves. And in fact, that's one of the themes of the Star Wars sequels. Maybe you guys would have liked those movies better if you realize it's the same thing as The Matrix.
So it has, if you're familiar, like the Joseph Campbell study with mythology, you have a lot of the things of mythology. You have the old wise man, you have the reluctant hero that comes about, you have the anonymous villainous. So a lot of them are really the same kind of look all the time. And really, you hire anonymous villainy, but you also have a hierarchy to that villainy too. That even though you're the foot soldiers to bureaucracy to something, we talk about the architect or something like that. So you have a lot of the tropes you have with a lot of mythology stories.
That's true. I mean, it's very much a hero's
It's a very old-fashioned story.
This is very much the hero's journey. I mean, in every single blanket of the term. And that's one thing I grew to really appreciate about the film, is that as Neo, we are constantly looking for purpose. We are looking for who we really are. And I love the fact that not only is the first act of the film about understanding the world around us, the second act of the film is understanding ourselves. And that's really cool, is that the film blankets itself in these two hemispheres, that once he is free and once he is out, he still doesn't have a place in this new world. He has what people expect him to be, he has what he feels he needs to be, and then he has the answers that are played upon himself. I love the conversation with the Oracle, when he goes in there and she is giving him only the information that he gives her. Yeah, he's only being given the stuff that he thinks is true. And I love that interplay works so much better upon a rewatch than where you know where the film is going.
Yeah, so it's almost like the anticipation will cause the reaction. There's a lot of deep thought. We don't have time to talk about all the philosophical stuff that goes.
Yeah, if you want though, there is a 2-book series that you can find called The Matrix and Philosophy, and then I think there's More Matrix and Philosophy. I think the 2 books are. I have both of them, and they're phenomenal reads if you really want to dive into it. But we'll warn you ahead of time: your brain will melt in the weekend.
Bake your noodles. That's what she says, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Bake your noodle. So the hero journeys, you have also like Robert Hughes talked about in his essay Shock of New. What are you going to bring in new to the hero's journey? And boy, they bring a bunch, even though new technology, new style like the bullet time, which is new, but also new looks and new atmospheres.
Yep. So let's not forget the film cost $65 million to make. So all you people who are thinking like that we need to be doing these $200 million movies, I will throw you a Deadpool and I will throw you The Matrix, because you can do this stuff for cheaper. You can do it for cheaper, and the one ingredient that it takes is time. So the fact that this movie was able to be made for $65 million was because it was not expected to be popular. That's why the movie was more popular on a cheaper budget, was because they had the time and energy, similar to like Jurassic Park. When those films came out, people weren't putting them down saying it has to come out on this date. No, they allowed you to finish the movie, so you weren't racing to the finish line. So often today, these movies that are cheaper, $65 million, cheaper, come out with less products because they're forced through the studio system too darn fast. This film was given the time.
And also, talk about new, is a musical score that's very techno. We talk about this as a techno-noir, so of course, what are you going to do with the music? You're going to put techno music into it to emphasize where we're coming from.
Yeah, and Don Davis did the score. He also did Jurassic Park 3, a couple horror films, including Valentine from the late 80s. Don Davis viewed the film as being a lot of mirror images. You know, there's even mirrors prevalent on the film constantly, and being able to play with, like two versions of yourself, two versions of expectations, two versions of worlds. And so he modeled all of his film as being reflections and reverberations. So that's why a lot of that like comes out and it comes back in. Similar to kind of like the rising of the tide, or playing wine glasses. You know, it's kind of got that circular motion to everything in there. Nice. And when you know that going into the film, when I had read like an interview with him talking about that, and I rewatched the movie, that when he really ramps up those reverberations is when the film is kind of coming to terms with its duality. And that's a really cool idea that works in the film, that plays off the techno music, like the actual soundtrack of the movie. It plays off the score really well for two things that you don't think would work as well. That wow with like the, you know, Dig Through the Ditches Dragula song from Rob Zombie shows up, and it's like, how do these worlds mesh? But that's what this is really good at, that techno war with the philosophical war. It's really cool at play, you know.
The other thing that this movie does really well is where to slow down the movie.
And not just bullet time slow down.
Not just bullet time, but you know, even though the action is heavy, and you do it, you know, because a lot of people just overly do it. It's almost like when you have a crash cymbal for your drum set. You don't want to hit that crash cymbal all the time, but you don't want to hit it not enough time. You want to hit the right time. And here they hit the right time of slowing the movie down, so you get all the juicy scenes of the somersaults and all the acrobats and all the, are you really going to drag a helicopter? All the stuff that gives a pause, like, you got to be kidding me. That's just supposed to be where you slow it down instead of just being overly done with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the film does a balancing act, like you pointed out, where they do have some pretty action-heavy scenes at the beginning of the film, and I think they push you enough with the action where you get just to the point of kind of almost frustration until they start giving you what's really going on. Like, they push you just to the point of, like, almost giving up on not understanding. And I think that's clever, too, because there's been a number of films where the not understanding portion gets stretched too far, where you lose care. And then when they finally give you the answer, you're like, I don't give it anymore. Like, turning it off. This film pushes it just to the point where you're like, tell me what's happening. And then they tell you what's happening. And it's perfect. It's not done. I can see this film, if it were a horror film, the stuff that happens at the beginning of Act 2 would be the twist ending of the horror film. Like, that's how that kind of stuff would play out. But instead, they push it just to the point where you're willing to accept it. And then when you get the answer, you feel very, like, at peace with it. Even though it's a haunting answer.
It's a great thing to emphasize, because there are some things that you could make a horror movie out of this.
Oh, yeah.
With costuming and the lighting and how dark it is and how richly dark it is and the villains and everything. This could gone to a horror movie aspect. There are some things that use like in horror movies, like, you know, Lawrence Fishburne rising from the tiles, almost like Dracula. They use that classic stilt of him rising up. You know?
Oh, yeah.
They also do like the element like bugs coming in you and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, and I always think of that moment when someone in the Matrix is co-opted by the agent, and they've got that moment when their face is literally tearing away from their body as they morph into this agent. And you have to understand that that's a person. Like, that's a person being co-opted by this program. Right. It's a possession thing. It's you know, like, everybody kind of talked about how horrific it was that Steve Trevor was doing it in the Wonder Woman 84 movie, but like, that's basically what's happening in this movie, is that they're co-opting you and forcing you to do things outside of your ability.
It has the three things that John Carpenter says makes a horror movie, is things coming after you, things coming out of you, and you think you're the last person on earth and somebody knocks on the door.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we've just changed it. The Matrix is a horror movie, and I think, really though, in a lot of ways it is, because there's a lot of realization to the film that's terrifying. Yeah, that causes you to have a mental reckoning. Like I said, you read those philosophy books, your brain will melt. Yeah. But that's what I really appreciate, though.
Pink slime, like Ghostbusters Part 2.
When we get the Wachowskis, though, every time I watch one of their movies for another time, I can almost choose one element to follow through that is enjoyable from beginning to end if you ignore nothing else. And this most recent time I watched the movie, I wanted to focus purely on the agents. Because I know so much about everything else, but that's something I hadn't really paid attention to. And the idea that the
agents,
Secret
Service.
Kind of like the men in black, if you will, that control the world, that are stronger than you, that have more abilities than you, but they also exist in a series of rules. I really found myself taken with that part of the mythology, and the fact that Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith, a tremendously underrated villain in his filmography.
Very reserved, right?
He's Megatron, you know.
Right,
Hugo Weaving is every bad guy. He's Red Skull, and yet people like, we don't talk, I don't think, enough currently about Agent Smith anymore, because even though he is a businessman protocol program, he's terrifying because he wants out. And I think that's really haunting, is the fact that the program has learned to think like a human.
And that's going to catalyst the story to move on. Yeah. But that's how you do, and I usually judge things on contrast. That's how you contrast, because the heroes are going to be busy with their costumes, busy looks, busy modern, they're going to have facial hair, fashionable earrings. Well, how do you contrast it? Very boring outfits, black, white, ties, everybody looks the same. So that's another contrast that I love about this, that emphasizes the story without really have to, you hold up you don't have to hold up a card and go, that's a bad guy, because he's got the suit on and everything. Nobody needs to hold up a cue card for you to know who the villains are. Yeah, the villains are black and white. They are right there and ready to go. But that's the same thing I do with a lot of Wachowski's other films. When I watch Speed Racer, I will tell you right now, Speed Racer is a top 10 favorite movie of all time for me. I adore this movie. I'm always tweeting about it. Deal with it. But I can watch it and focus on a different element of the character journey that's going on there. When I watch Cloud Atlas, there's like 20 characters that are 6 different people, or 20 people in the movie that are 6 different characters throughout time. You can just focus on Tom Hanks' characters the entire movie, and the through line of that. That's what I love about the Wachowskis, is that every time they make a film, there is an element of like rewatch to it, that I can watch the movie on repeat over and over again. I'll even say I think Jupiter Ascending is probably one of their worst movies, but man, they really swing for the fences when they do that. No, they took a big bat. They swung with a big bat with that one. Yeah, and I think there's definitely some problems. This fourth Matrix movie is only being done by Lana Wachowski. I think Lily's taken a step back for personal reasons, which kind of the vitriol of where we are politically right now and in America, like, I can see someone in her place needing to step back and work on other stuff, and she's working on a TV show too. So like, there's a lot of stuff going on there. But I'm very interested to see kind of like all of these elements from this first film being bled through that fourth film. Where are we going to pick up with that? So. Yeah, it's because it's definitely because we've seen the Wizard Behind the Curtain, where you've seen all of it. So what are you going to do with that? Are you going to branch more, or have introduction of more different dynamics or bureaucracy inside the Matrix, or what has? Well, and the reason I bring that up is because when we talk about those 2 sequels, which we are on the way to doing, when we talk about them, we're going to talk a little bit about the things other people don't like about them, because more people consider those 2 films not canon. Like they don't even want to talk about it. They watch the first film and the first film only. And for us both saying that this is kind of our lesser favorite, I want to see kind of I think there's going to be a lot more of this first Matrix in this fourth Matrix, because I think that there is an element of, you've got to sell this to people who have turned off the TV. Right. Right, and I think another thing that works well is they understand color scenery, right? It's completely muted. It's supposed to look unentertaining to be in this world, right? Yeah. In the beginning of the movie, drab city, constantly, and even the dancing looks drab. Why would you go to that dance club? Yeah, you said the Prowler was green. The Matrix is green. The Matrix, right? Yeah, we should put that up there. But that is, in essence, reasons why the girl in red pops out. Yep. Even though you of course you're going to pay attention to it, because we've not been seeing a lot of color up to that point. Yep. And then the fact that she's a program that's made by a teenage boy, basically. Right. Yeah. But I agree with you. Like, there's the greens of the Matrix, there's the blues of the everyday world. There's so much color correcting done in this movie that actually, if you notice, during the scene where they're fighting in the dojo setting, Keanu Reeves' lips turn yellow a couple times, because I think the over-color correction has caused them to have to repaint his lips. Oh. And there's a few moments, because I will say this, one of the flaws of the film is that time has aged the CG a little bit. It is not as crystal clear CG as it was, and you can notice things like his lips turn a little yellow at one point. But back to that dojo scene, it's actually one of my favorite points in the movie, because it's how it combines the action and the philosophy. But it's almost like they just slice. It's like pulled out of them. It's not. It seems like it's not part of the movie. Yeah, it's just like also inserted something like, oh, something like they did completely inserted, which is the whole point of it.
Yeah,
it's
so iconic, and yet it kind of feels out of place in the movie because it's a program that they're running. But it's the part that every time I watch this movie with my wife, when that scene starts, she's like, "Oh yeah," and she like sits up in the chair and she's ready to watch because she loves that scene too. There's all these parts that the entire film is that scene. That scene is the entire movie where we're trying to kind of come to terms with the fact that we need to break out of what we've been learning. I mean, he spends hours just learning kung fu in his head. And there's even a moment when they're practicing in the dojo, and Reeves does a couple of hand movements, and he does the four-finger thumb nose touch, which was a Bruce Lee iconic thing that he ad-libbed. And it almost makes me think that maybe we learned all these programs from watching old movies.
Yeah, it's another thing that another thread you can add to the whole philosophy of like,
did we actually learn kung fu, or did we learn kung fu from watching a fake kung fu on the movie, or did we learn real kung fu? Like, how did we learn these elements that we've taken from? Because they said it was closer to 2199 than 1999. It's 200 years that have passed, close to. Where did we get these things that we're learning from if the entire like world structure has fallen down? Probably off the internet. Probably the remnants of the internet. We probably downloaded a bunch of videos. But I like that there's that training protocol right there. This movie was prime for a video game, and the fact that we only got a couple is pretty shocking to me.
It does have elements of feel like being a video game. It does feel like a comic book. Mm-hmm. I think if you told somebody this is based on a comic book, they would be like, no kidding. Yeah. But it has those two components that really make it a good movie that you don't want to play the video game. A lot of problem with video game movies is I want to play the video game, I don't want to watch the movie. Yeah. Well, this is almost like, I love the movie, and even if I don't play the video game, I'm still going to enjoy watching the movie.
Yeah, the one nice thing about that is I have played the video games, and I'm terrible at both of the Matrix video games I've tried because I just cannot figure out how to pass like specific levels. So that's the nice thing about the movie is I don't have to be good at it.
But that's another thing that it talks about of the philosophies of, well, we're going to do this. Well, that's suicide. Well, how do you know it's never been done before? That kind of play of, we're going to do it because nobody's ever done it before. Yeah. And the kind of the structure of a saboteur of the whole process as well. That, there's one guy that wants to go back, doesn't really want to deal with reality anymore.
Yeah, I like that there's a conversation, and we'll pick this up, I think, with the second film, too. At one point, they said, like 7% or something like that of people are willing to embrace the Matrix as what it is. They're willing, like when they learn the truth, they're willing to turn their back on it and just say, "I'm fine. I can't understand. I can't accept the reality of it." And I really like that too. And
it's hard to raw dog reality.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one thing we touched on the style a little bit, but we have to talk about the fact that none of this matters if the film's entertainment and its core action is not great. Yeah. And this is amazing action work. Reeves' stunt double and the stunt coordinator for the film is Chad Stahelski, which, if you're a fan of John Wick, you can thank him. He's the director of those films. He went on to do some big.
Well, it makes sense to recruit Keanu because you know what you get.
Keanu and Gun Kata got to translate from that film to this. That's kind of the joke that everyone thinks that the ending of The Matrix 3 is just Keanu Reeves going into John Wick's. Like going back into the Matrix as John Wick, and they just continue the films like that. It really comes down to the action has to work, and even though the film has got those decades of age on the CG, and some of it doesn't look as clear,
outrageously ridiculous, it's effective.
Absolutely,
it had to be outrageously ridiculous because you're working in a simulation, so you have to emphasize that we're going to bend reality, and it has to go way over the top. And that's it. And I talk about it when I critique artwork. Where's your exaggeration? That's your exaggeration.
Yeah, you've got to have something that hooks people with a uniqueness to it that makes them, if they don't want to listen to, like my buddies who just wanted to watch the guns being used. They didn't care at all about the philosophy portion of the film, but thankfully the gun work worked, the fight sequences worked, the hand-to-hand combat stuff worked, where you can put forth the effort of just watching the film even if you don't even understand it. There are elements of this movie that take multiple viewings to watch, but they're not required viewing. And that's what works, is that the film can be entertaining just purely if you ignore everything else going on and watch the people in the black suits punch each other,
So I just want to emphasize, all the 90s of tech noirs led up to this movie, and this movie pretty much is the firework, the explosion of all of what we're leading up to. And of course it happened in 1991 to end the 90s. Of all these little cult tech noir movies, and this one's the big one that pops out. And of course you talk about it's high exaggerations, It's what we talk about in the works shock of the new. It's some things we've never seen before, even though it's an old-fashioned story.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen it before, but never with this casing.
Yeah.
You know, this is a brand new model car. It still runs on 4 wheels, but like we get to see it in a whole new way. And you're right. You know, Dark City and all these kind of previous films, they walked. Johnny Mnemonic walked so that the Matrix.
That was the reason why I was hesitant to see this, because like, oh no, he's in a dark, dreary tech noir Keanu Reeves at Johnny Mnemonic again.
You don't like Johnny Mnemonic? Okay. Well, we're gonna have to talk about that.
That was one of the hesitations of why I didn't hesitate. I hesitated to see this movie. So, right. So yeah, we're gonna have to talk about Johnny Mnemonic.
See, this was for me probably my first real Keanu Reeves like movie. Like the one where like he's really at the forefront. I think I snuck upstairs. My parents were watching The Devil's Advocate, but like other than that, this was like my introduction to him as he was. And
that's pretty cool.
You know, I always think, whoa, you know, it's the way you can always have it. So, have you seen The Matrix? We're just kind of scratching the surface. We talked for like 20, 25 minutes here, but we're only scratching the surface of the film. There's so much good content out about it.
You can find there's a lot of good fan theories out there. Like books. And
there's plenty of stuff to kind of dive into.
Huge.
What I appreciate about the film is that with time I have been like a little bit kinder to it, with the inclusion of the Animatrix, with the 2 sequels, with this world that was built. It makes me look back on the original film and really appreciate both the simplicity of that they were going for, because it really is simple in comparison to the follow-ups that were coming that I think were even grander. What came with this film, I don't think it was 100% successful, but it's 98%. And you know what? I'm not going to cry about 98% success.
Right, yeah. So, this is The Matrix. Have you seen it? Do you agree with a lot of the stuff or some of the fan theories? Make comments down below and check out our Patreon as well. Yeah, don't forget to do all that stuff. And you can start now if you want to rate your Matrix series for us in the comments. You can rate your Wachowski films in the comments. You know, we want to see if you're like us and you put this film still in a high regard, but maybe below what's coming next. Or if you think we're completely insane and those other 2 movies are dog garbage and we just shouldn't even do videos on them. Hey, that's fine. You can tell us in the comments below as well. Until we come back with our next installment, you can find my film reviews on gofilmreviews.com. And you can find the St. Paul Filmcast anywhere you find podcasts where I interview local independent filmmakers from the Twin Cities area. Yep. So, you know, until next time, you know, plug back in. Plug back.